Imagine a world where most men are loud, desperate, and predictable, trying too hard to impress, yet failing to leave a mark. Now, imagine a completely different kind of man. A man who doesn't chase attention, who doesn't need to perform, and who doesn't rely on charm to get noticed. A man who asks one single question, just one, that instantly makes younger women stop, pause, and rethink everything they thought they knew about attraction. This isn't some cheesy pickup line, and it isn't about being flashy or rich. This is the kind of insight almost no one talks about, the kind of knowledge that flips the script on everything you've ever been told. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why younger women are irresistibly drawn to certain older men, not because of age, not because of status, and certainly not because of looks, but because of a subtle, psychological truth that almost no one teaches. You'll discover the one question that creates instant trust, deeper connection, and emotional impact. A question so powerful it makes her feel seen, understood, and intrigued in ways most men never even dream of. If you've ever wondered why some men seem to captivate younger women effortlessly while others fade into the background, you need to watch this video until the very last second. Because what you're about to learn isn't obvious. It isn't what the mainstream tells you. It's the raw, psychological reality that separates the average man from the unforgettable man. The man who commands attention without trying, the man whose presence is magnetic, and the man who creates a level of trust and curiosity that younger women can't resist. Stay with me until the end, and you'll learn the hidden strategies that turn ordinary conversations into unforgettable connections. This is the kind of knowledge most men will never hear, and once you understand it, it will change the way you approach attraction forever. Watch closely, because missing this could mean staying invisible while others effortlessly command attention. Most people assume younger women are impressed by youth, by physical appearance, or by loud charisma, but that belief comes from a shallow understanding of human psychology. When you really study human behavior, you discover something far more interesting. Younger women are not impressed by men who blend into the noise. They're impressed by the man who carries a different frequency, one that isn't desperate for validation, one that isn't fighting for attention, one that isn't chasing approval the way most men do. And the reason older men stand out is because many of them, through experience or pain or self-reflection, have learned something boys still haven't understood. Superficiality exhausts people. It drains connection. It makes everything feel transactional rather than meaningful. You have to understand the world younger women live in today. They're not just getting attention, they're drowning in it. Every day they receive messages, compliments, invitations, fake confidence, recycled charm, and empty flirtation. They see the same lines, the same gestures, the same predictable approach from men who think being bold is the same as being interesting. And when something becomes common, it loses all value. When something becomes repetitive, it becomes forgettable. So a younger woman becomes numb to shallow interest, not because she is arrogant, but because she has been oversaturated by it. Her reaction to the superficial isn't rejection, it's fatigue. This is where mature, grounded men naturally rise without trying. They don't compete. They don't rush. They don't perform. They don't use loudness to create presence. Instead, they speak slowly, think clearly, and act intentionally. That energy alone breaks the pattern she's used to, because younger men often operate from insecurity disguised as confidence. They talk too much to hide what they don't know. They overshare to fill the silence. They impress with their lifestyle instead of their character. They rely on the external because the internal is still under construction. But a man who has lived long enough to understand himself no longer seeks identity from another person's reaction. His calmness is not an act, it's a result of survival. His self-respect isn't a performance, it's earned. And younger women feel that difference instantly. They feel the stability. They feel the grounded nature. They feel the certainty in his tone, in his presence, in the way he listens without trying to control the direction of the conversation. That's why superficial men fade into the background, while the deeper man becomes unforgettable. And let's be clear, depth doesn't mean being mysterious for the sake of it. It doesn't mean acting distant or cold. Depth means you have layers that weren't built from trends or external validation. It means you have thoughts shaped by experience, not by insecurity. It means you don't need to dominate the conversation to feel powerful. You can sit in silence without fear. You can look someone in the eye and actually understand them, not judge them or try to fix them. That emotional stability is rare, and what is rare always becomes desirable. Younger women are not impressed by noise, they're impressed by signal. And that signal maturity, presence, intention cannot be faked. The modern world has made shallow men louder, but it has also made deeper men more magnetic because they're operating in a world starving for authenticity. The younger woman who appears confident on the outside often carries unspoken fears on the inside. And she's not looking for a man to complete her. She's looking for a man who won't complicate her life. Someone whose stability softens her mind, not someone whose chaos amplifies her worries. Many older men underestimate how powerful their calmness is. They think youth is a disadvantage, but in reality, youth lacks what experience naturally builds: emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is not about being soft or sensitive. It's about being aware of pressure, aware of boundaries, aware of energy, aware of the difference between connection and performance. Younger women may be surrounded by men who want their attention, but they are rarely surrounded by men who want their truth. And that is why superficial men never last. They don't touch the part of her that remembers. The deeper man, however, leaves an imprint not because he tries harder, but because he understands more. He sees beyond her appearance. He recognizes the difference between confidence and coping. He listens to understand, not to respond. And that simple shift creates emotional safety, something younger men often fail to provide because they're still wrestling with their own insecurities. When a younger woman encounters a man who doesn't need validation, she becomes curious. When she encounters a man who doesn't try to impress, she becomes attentive. When she encounters a man who speaks with intention, she becomes open. Older men sometimes forget that their depth, their clarity, and their ability to stay grounded in emotional storms is exactly what younger women crave, but rarely find. Not because they're seeking a father figure or someone to depend on, but because they're seeking the stability missing in their generation, stability rooted in self-awareness, not control. And the irony is, the moment you stop trying to win her attention is the moment she starts noticing you. The moment you stop trying to be impressive is the moment you become intriguing. The moment you value understanding over approval is the moment you stand apart. Superficiality has no weight. It leaves no mark. It creates no memory. But depth, real depth, is what resonates, what lingers, what makes someone pause long after the conversation ends. And that's why younger women are not impressed by the loud or the flashy. They are impressed by the man who makes them think, who makes them feel understood, who makes them feel safe being themselves without performing. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember what entertained them. They remember what transformed them, and the man who chooses depth over noise becomes the one she never forgets. The world is full of men trying to be impressive, become the man who becomes unforgettable. There is a moment in every conversation where a woman decides whether a man is worth remembering or simply another passing interaction. It's not based on looks, age, or status. It's based on psychological impact. And this is where most men fail without even realizing it. They walk into a conversation trying to appear confident, trying to be charming, trying to sound interesting, but they end up sounding like every other man she has ever spoken to. Predictable, repetitive, forgettable. What they don't understand is that a younger woman has heard everything before, except the one question that separates a deep man from a shallow one, a grounded man from a desperate one, a mature man from a boy pretending to be confident. Most men ask questions to fill silence. Only a few ask questions that open a woman's inner world. And the question, "How do you want to be understood?" is powerful not because it is poetic, but because it exposes something profound in tension. It tells her that you're not interested in the mask she shows the world. You're interested in the mind beneath it. You're not fascinated by the external. You're curious about her internal identity, the part she rarely talks about because no one has ever cared enough to ask. This question shifts her entire perception of you. It's not the kind of question that comes from a man who wants something from her. It's the kind of question that comes from a man who already has himself, and that changes everything. Because when you ask this question, you show her something she doesn't experience, often emotional presence. You're not chasing her. You're not calculating your next line. You're not trying to impress her. You're anchoring the conversation in meaning rather than performance. Younger women are used to questions that collect facts, not emotions. Men ask about her hobbies, her job, her city, but none of those questions reveal anything about her essence. They're transactional, they scratch the surface. But when you ask how she wants to be understood, you're asking her to articulate her identity, not her RA. You're inviting her to reveal her values, not her preferences. And whether she consciously realizes it or not, she feels the shift immediately. She recognizes that you are operating on a wavelength her generation rarely experiences. There's also a psychological effect happening beneath the surface. When a woman speaks about how she wants to be understood, she isn't just sharing information, she is emotionally investing. She is revealing a personal truth that requires vulnerability, and vulnerability creates connection. Not the weak kind of vulnerability people romanticize online, but the grounded vulnerability that happens when someone feels safe enough to be honest. You've created an emotional doorway, and she steps through it because your question shows her you can handle the truth she normally keeps to herself. And the beauty of this question is that it doesn't place pressure on her. You're not asking her to confess her trauma or explain her past. You're asking her how she wants to be seen, something she has probably never been asked. You're giving her the space to express the version of herself she silently wishes others could perceive. And when someone allows you to express that version, you naturally feel drawn to them. That's why this question creates instant depth. Older men often underestimate the power of being intentional. They think maturity is about being serious or reserved, but true maturity is about being aware of what creates connection, aware of what brings down defenses, aware of why people open up. When you ask this question, you're showing awareness that younger men usually don't have. You're shifting the energy of the conversation from attraction to alignment. And alignment is far more magnetic than attraction ever could be. Most people today listen to respond, not to understand, and women especially feel the exhaustion of that. They talk, men hear words, and then men chase an outcome. But when you ask this question, you're communicating one unspoken message. I am not trying to control your direction. I am trying to understand your reality. And that is rare. Rare things create emotional gravity. Rare things linger in the mind. Rare things build trust. The question also reveals something about you, your depth, your emotional intelligence, your clarity. You're showing her you're not afraid of complexity. You're not intimidated by depth. You're not insecure about sitting in a serious moment. And that kind of confidence is the kind younger men try to imitate, but can never truly embody. It's the kind that comes from a man who has lived, learned, fallen, rebuilt, and now carries wisdom instead of ego. And women, especially younger women, feel the difference between ego and wisdom immediately. Ego talks loudly. Wisdom asks quietly. Ego tries to be impressive. Wisdom asks questions that make the other person feel impressive. Ego seeks validation. Wisdom seeks understanding. And when you ask how she wants to be understood, you're showing her that your mind is not driven by neediness, but by curiosity. Curiosity that is grounded, stable, and secure. Qualities that feel like emotional oxygen to someone who rarely experiences them. And there's another layer to this. When she answers the question, even if she answers superficially at first, she begins to reveal patterns of thought that tell you everything you need to know. You're not just learning who she is, you're learning how she sees herself. Some women will reveal ambition, some will reveal softness, some will reveal fear, some will reveal strength. But whatever she reveals, you gain insight men don't have because they never asked a question that opened that door. And once that door is open, the conversation transforms. You're no longer two people exchanging information. You're two people exchanging identity. That's why older men who use this approach become unforgettable. Not because they are older, but because they lead with awareness rather than performance. She remembers you because you made her remember herself. The right question at the right moment has the power to shift an entire connection. This one does exactly that. If you want to be remembered, ask the questions only a real man has the courage and clarity to ask. When you ask a woman a question that carries depth, you are not only opening a conversation, you are opening a psychological doorway. And this doorway leads to something most men never reach with a younger woman: genuine emotional trust. Trust isn't built through compliments, nor through confidence, nor through chemistry alone. Trust is built when a woman feels that her inner world is safe in your presence. And that safety doesn't come from what you say. It comes from what your presence communicates. When you ask a question that invites her to express who she is beneath the surface, something very powerful happens. You shift the entire energy of the interaction from performance to truth. Younger women are surrounded by men who want to impress them, chase them, win them, or distract them. But they are rarely surrounded by men who make them feel calm enough to open their hearts. So when you ask a question like, "How do you want to be understood?" you are giving her permission to step out of the roles she plays and speak from the part of herself she usually hides. That kind of emotional invitation instantly sets you apart. It signals to her that you are not just another man looking for attention. You are someone who knows how to create emotional safety. The reason this question builds trust so quickly is because it's not about what you want from her. It's about who she really is. It shifts the spotlight away from you and places it gently on her truth. And the moment a woman feels understood, or even feels that you are trying to understand her, her emotional walls lower naturally. Not because you force them down, but because she senses that she is not being judged. She senses that she doesn't need to pretend. She senses that she can reveal the part of herself she wants someone to finally see. Most men believe that attraction is what creates emotional connection, but they've got it backwards. Emotional connection creates attraction. When she feels safe speaking to you, when she feels heard, when she feels seen in a way she hasn't before, that emotional comfort becomes the foundation of desire. Younger women are not impressed by men who try to dominate the conversation. They're impressed by the man who listens in a way that feels intentional, not passive. Listening is not just hearing her words, it's understanding her emotional logic, the framework behind what she says, and the meaning behind what she doesn't say. This is where older men have a natural advantage. They know how to listen without rushing to respond. They know how to hold a conversation without making it about themselves. They know how to sit in silence long enough for her to fill it with something real. Younger men often listen with impatience, waiting for their turn to speak. Older men listen with awareness, waiting for the moment a deeper layer of truth reveals itself. That is what makes a woman trust you, not just the question, but the presence behind the question. You have to understand that emotional trust for a woman is not built through logic. It's felt, it's sensed, it's intuitive. She observes your tone, your calmness, your patience, your consistency. When you ask a question that reveals depth, she looks to see if the depth is real. She watches how you respond to her vulnerability. Do you rush to give advice? Do you try to control the narrative? Do you dismiss her words? Or do you honor them? When she sees that you handle her truth with respect, that you don't weaponize it, that you don't belittle it, that you don't turn it into a performance, you become someone she emotionally trusts. And once a woman emotionally trusts you, the relationship dynamic changes instantly. She becomes more open, more curious, more comfortable. She feels a sense of ease that she doesn't feel with men who chase her physically but ignore her internally. And ironically, when she feels emotionally safe, she feels more attracted. Attraction without trust feels temporary. Attraction with trust feels magnetic. It feels natural. It feels like something she doesn't need to force. This is why a deep question is so powerful. It doesn't just extract information. It elevates the entire relationship energy. It shifts your presence from an outsider to someone she can actually connect with. And when she connects with you emotionally, she begins to reveal aspects of herself she doesn't show to others. Not because you demanded it, but because your presence feels like a space where truth is welcomed. The other important part is that this question does something to you as well. It forces you to listen in a different way. It forces you to slow down. It forces you to observe the nuances in her words. With shallow questions, men stay on the surface. With a deep question, you enter her psychological territory. And when you enter that territory, you begin seeing who she is rather than who she pretends to be. This helps you understand her motives, her needs, her desires, and her fears, all of which help you build a stronger, more meaningful connection. This is also why depth cannot be faked. If you ask the question but fail to hold the space for her answer, she will feel it instantly. If you ask out of strategy rather than sincerity, she will sense the manipulation. Women are biologically wired to detect emotional authenticity, not intellectually, intuitively. And that is why this approach only works when you genuinely care to understand her, when your intention is clean, when your presence is grounded, when your energy communicates maturity rather than desperation. You don't win trust by being perfect. You win trust by being present. You win it by asking the questions most men never think about. You win it by caring about her mind, not just her beauty. You win it by giving her something rare, the experience of being understood in a world where everyone is trying to get something from her, but very few are trying to understand her. When trust is real, everything else becomes easier. The conversation deepens, the attraction strengthens, the connection feels effortless. She no longer sees you as an option. She sees you as a presence, someone who stands out without trying, someone who connects without forcing, someone who understands without judgment. Ask the question, hold the space, and let the connection build itself. Depth creates trust, and trust creates the kind of attraction that never fades. When people talk about younger women being attracted to older men, they often make it about age itself, as if age alone is some magical advantage. But age without depth is meaningless. Age without growth is just time passing. What truly creates that magnetic pull isn't the number of years lived. It's what those years have produced inside you. Younger women aren't drawn to older men because they're older. They're drawn to the psychological contrast, the emotional stability, the inner clarity, the depth that comes from facing life instead of running from it. And this contrast becomes obvious the moment you speak. It's in the tone of your voice, the way you listen, the way you interpret things. Younger men often respond from impulse, ego, or insecurity. They react quickly, they take things personally, they escalate small situations because they haven't yet learned how to regulate their emotions. A mature man responds differently. not because he's trying to look calm, but because he's lived through enough storms to know that panic solves nothing. That steady energy is what younger women feel, often before they can explain it. You have to understand how rare emotional stability has become. In a world dominated by instant reactions, emotional chaos, and people who confuse drama with passion, someone who moves with intentionality becomes incredibly attractive. When a younger woman meets a man whose energy doesn't spike from insecurity or dip from fear, she experiences something many her age cannot give her: emotional predictability. And predictability isn't boring, it's comforting, it's grounding, it's safe. People today underestimate how attractive safety is. Not safety in the physical sense, but safety in the emotional sense. Knowing that a man won't weaponize your vulnerability, won't crumble under pressure, won't create emotional confusion, and won't compete with you for validation. Younger men often seek validation from women. Older, secure men validate themselves. That alone places them in a different category. And when you add depth to that stability, everything changes. Depth means you've taken time to understand yourself, your flaws, your triggers, your values, your vision. Depth means you're not threatened by someone else's emotions because you've learned how to process your own. Depth means your confidence isn't loud, it's calm. It isn't exaggerated, it's natural. It isn't performative, it's rooted. Younger women pick up on that instantly. It's not age that attracts them, it's the experience that has shaped you. Depth also allows you to connect in ways younger men struggle with. Younger men talk to impress, deeper men talk to understand. Younger men want to be right, deeper men want to be real. Younger men chase beauty, deeper men recognize character. When you speak with depth, you don't just communicate, you resonate. You give her something to think about, something to reflect on, something that hits her on a level beyond physical attraction, and that resonance becomes memory. Most men try to be unforgettable through intensity, but what actually makes you unforgettable is consistency. Anyone can create excitement for a moment. Very few can create emotional clarity for a lifetime. Younger women get excitement all the time. What they rarely get is peace. And peace, when combined with strength, becomes irresistible. Older men who carry depth offer a mixture of assurance and understanding that feels refreshing to someone whose age group often lacks direction. Another thing depth gives you is perspective. You don't obsess over small things. You don't get jealous over meaningless interactions. You don't lose yourself trying to impress her or chase her approval. Your focus isn't on being chosen, it's on choosing wisely. And that shift in mindset is powerful. When you value your peace, your standards rise. When your standards rise, your presence becomes selective. And when your presence becomes selective, your value becomes obvious. Younger women feel this difference deeply. A man who knows himself doesn't need to prove himself. A man who has clarity doesn't need theatrics. A man who has lived enough to learn stops overreacting and starts observing. This emotional maturity creates a dynamic where she feels safe to express herself without fear of judgment. She feels intrigued by your perspective. She feels respected by your self-control. And because she feels understood by you, she naturally begins to understand you. Depth also gives you a different relationship with uncertainty. Younger men often seek control because uncertainty scares them. Mature men understand that uncertainty is part of life, and they don't force outcomes, they guide them. This creates a sense of grounded leadership that younger women appreciate more than they admit. It's not about dominance, it's about direction. It's not about control, it's about clarity. You become someone she can trust not because you demand trust, but because you embody it. And once again, this has nothing to do with age itself. A man can be 50 and emotionally immature, or he can be 30 and incredibly grounded. What matters is the inner landscape you've built, the discipline, the self-awareness, the emotional intelligence, the personal growth. Those qualities create a psychological atmosphere around you that younger women notice immediately. It's the atmosphere of a man who doesn't break under pressure, who speaks with intention, who listens with presence, who moves with purpose. People forget that attraction is not just physical, it's energetic. And the energy of a stable, aware, self-possessed man will always stand out in a world full of impulsive, uncertain, loud reactions. Younger women aren't craving age, they're craving depth. They're craving understanding. They're craving someone who doesn't add chaos to their life. Someone who helps them think, someone who helps them grow, someone who makes them feel safe enough to be honest. That's why older men who cultivate depth become naturally attractive. They don't pretend. They don't perform. They don't pressure. They offer something rare, a grounded presence. And grounded presence is more seductive than anything superficial because it speaks to a woman's subconscious, not just her eyes. If you want to understand the real reason younger women are drawn to older men, its simple depth is a superpower, and most men never develop it. Be the man whose depth becomes his greatest advantage. Because depth is the one thing no one can imitate, and the one thing she will never forget.